Hi there, and welcome back to our Starsector pirate campaign. So, a few of you had requested that I show some shipbuilding, and unfortunately my shipbuilding process can be a little bit arduous and involve quite a bit of fiddling about. So what I've done is I've cut out most of the experimentation that I did ahead of actually doing the final build that I settled on. I'm just going to show the eventual process where I took out the weapons from the Cerberus and the Wayfarer that we previously had on there. And I'm going to add the autocannon, light machine gun, and the light assault gun that we had on those other ships onto the new brawler that we picked up at the end of the previous episode. And then I'm going to add the hardened shields and heavy armor mods. I'm going to spend some story points to have these built in, since we do intend on using this brawler as our flagship for the foreseeable future. And then finally I'm going to add the hardened subsystems mod as well, and then put the remaining points into vents and capacitors. Of course, with some of the weapons stripped out, the Cerberus and Wayfarer had a couple of additional points to throw around. So I added a heavy mortar to the Cerberus, and I put a couple of new hull mods onto the Wayfarer just to round out their builds. So having done all that, and after picking up some supplies, fuel, and crew, we're finally ready to leave Kamari Kandrum for good. I don't anticipate that we'll be back for a good long while. I've set a course for Galatia, as the first thing I want to do now is get started on the Galatia Academy storyline. However, we have spotted a Persian League trader, and that might be a good way to test out the capabilities of our new brawler. So let's give chase and see if we can pick up some new ships and perhaps some loot to supplement our quickly dwindling funds. So unfortunately there's a hegemony patrol on the other end of this jump point. He's not that much larger than us, but I'd rather not take the risk right now. Let's do a little bit of evasive flying and see if we can lose him. Alright, it looks like that patrol is giving up now, and I think we've picked up that Persian League trader again. Let's give chase and see if we can manage to catch up to him before he can make his delivery. Alright, so we did eventually manage to catch them. This fleet is much too large for anything we would have been able to handle even at the start of the last episode, but now that we have the brawler, I'm fairly confident we can take them on. So the first thing I'm going to do is have all of these guys follow me. One of you had previously commented that escorting ships tend not to do as much damage, but that's okay for the time being. The main purpose in this fight is to distract and disrupt the enemy fleet so that I can pick off targets one at a time. And having them all follow me just lets me keep a better eye on them, maybe help them out if they get into a precarious situation. So as you can see, the assault chain gun is really quite devastating to enemies once we can get past their shields. Ideally I just want machine guns and the other weapon slots, but we've been a little bit limited by what we've been able to find in battle salvage so far. Hopefully that's something we can remedy shortly though. So the heavy interceptor wing is causing some problems for us at the moment. As you can see, it was able to disable our engines there. But if we can push back these frigates, that might create an opening that we can use to reach the carrier in the back line. Great, so with that out of the way, we have the luxury of basically picking off the rest of this fleet in any order we like. This mule is definitely the tankiest of the remaining targets, but he's not all that dangerous, so I'm pretty comfortable going one-on-one against him for the time being. And if his friends show up, then we're more than fast enough to back off if we need to. Okay, so the rest of this fight should be pretty mundane. Okay, so the combat ships are out of the way, but the transport was what we were really after, so we're definitely going to pursue here. I think I can go out alone and finish this off. Okay, so we can salvage the mule here, and that's probably a good decision. We do plan on doing quite a lot of looting from here on out. And not a bad haul here. The supplies and fuel are always going to be useful, and then we also got some luxury and domestic goods. Let's see how much Asharu is willing to pay for the goods they must have been expecting. And let's go dark as well, since we're definitely not responsible for their supply shortage. Look, they just happen to be out of domestic and luxury goods. I wonder why. Okay, so we found the academic looking for a technology cache. This is one of those quests that appears one time in each playthrough, and it's a pretty good source of blueprints, so if it's not too far away from the core worlds, we'll probably take a look at that pretty soon. So I've thought a bit about how we're going to outfit this mule, and what I've decided is to strip all of the weapons off of the Cerberus. It's served us pretty well until now, but the mule is just a much bigger and beefier ship. Hopefully in a fight that'll allow it to do a much better job of distracting enemies away from our brawler. Of course, I'm still going to add safety overrides so that should it come up against something particularly dangerous, it'll still have the agility to disengage and move away safely. Alright, so we've made a few more round trips back to that debris field we left behind in the previous fight, and we've sold off anything we were able to find to the good people of Asharu. Also added a few more hull mods to the Cerberus now that it's no longer a combat ship, in particular the ones that increase its cargo and fuel capacity. So now we're finally back on our way to Galatia Academy, and the way that I want to handle this is that I don't really intend on reading all of the story fluff that's included in the main plot, but I'm going to leave enough time between each of the dialogue choices that if you do want to pause and read it on your own, you can go ahead and do that. In addition, I'll probably offer my own brief synopsis of each of the main story beats as they're happening, so that if you've only been through this main storyline once or twice, perhaps this will help jog your memory as to what's going on. So if you've played through the tutorial for Vanilla Starsector, that's essentially the prologue for the main story. What happens is that there's some scientists at the Galatia Academy conducting experiments on the jump point, and this causes the jump point to collapse and basically cut off Galatia from the rest of the sector. This causes the miners at the Drinky mining station to stage a rebellion, and in the tutorial you're tasked with quelling the rebellion and restoring functionality to the jump point. If you visit Galatia Academy after finishing the tutorial, you'll find that someone named Provost Baird has been placed in charge. If you request a meeting with Baird, she'll drop some hints that she has some sort of plan in the works. However, in typical video game fashion, she's not willing to share any details just yet and would prefer to have you doing some odd jobs first to build trust. At that point, you'll be put in touch with a guy named Alvis, who will assign you tasks on Baird's behalf. And that's really where we're at right now, so we've picked up a job or two from Alvis, but nothing I really want to tackle in the immediate future. I'd much rather spend this time looking for another trade fleet to intercept, so I think that's what we're going to do. I've set a course for Karas here, but my goal is really to pick a fight before we get there so that we can arrive with some loot to sell. Okay, I think that fleet's a little bit too big for us at the moment. And maybe that one too. Oh, but this one could work. Let's give this one a shot. So don't be fooled by the size of the ships here. There's actually only 3 frigates. The rest of these ships are all freighters, who won't even be in this fight. And a few of our ships have sustained some damage while traveling through hyperspace, but given the strength of our opposition, I don't see too much to be concerned about. I'm gonna have the smaller ships form up on the mule while I go out on my own and try to pick these guys off. So once again you can see that once we break through their shields, the assault chain gun really makes short work of these guys. And unlike the Cerberus, the Brawler really has quite a lot of flux capacity, so we can take more than a couple of sabos on the shields without overloading. And with just one ship left, I'm pretty comfortable letting the rest of the fleet try and take him out. Of course, their builds are pretty suboptimal, so they may just have to stall until I get there. We'll see. Yeah, so apparently our intervention was necessary after all, but still, a win is a win, and I'm happy with that. Alright, and with all the combat ships out of the way, all of the freighters have bugged out. Of course, that means we're gonna have to pursue them if we want to find out what they had in their cargo holds. So nothing too fancy here, we're just going to pick them off one at a time based on their speed. So Buffalo's first, then the Colossus, and then finally the Atlas. Alright, so one of the Buffaloes ended up in standard salvage, so we're definitely going to pick that up. It does unfortunately have degraded drive fields, so it's going to slow us down for a little bit, but that should be easy enough to fix. We're also going to pick up this Omen for 1 story point. It's got great survivability and utility for its size. The Atlas, unfortunately, I think is just too slow compared to everything else we have right now, and there's really no way to fix that until we get augmented drive fields. And now we really should be heading to Karis so that we can restore that buffalo. Alright, so we made it to Karis without incident, dropped off some of the junk that we picked up from that Tritachyon fleet, and picked up some much needed supplies and fuel. I've also gone ahead and restored the buffalo and the omen as well. Unfortunately, we don't have anything to put on it except for these mining lasers, but the good news is the omen is pretty good regardless. We're also going to build in the Hardened Shields hull mod. The omen has fantastic 360 degree shields, and giving it the hull mod is just going to make them that much better. And in case you haven't guessed, we're going to round out the build with safety overrides. This is going to make the peak performance time pretty short, but we're not getting into any huge fleet battles just yet, so this shouldn't be a major factor. Alright, so we've finished what we needed to do in Karis. Before we left, there was a woman at the bar who was selling organics at a pretty good price. So now we're going to head to Umbra and see if we can sell those for a profit. Of course, on the way there, we're still going to be on the lookout for any trading fleets we can take on. There's still some space in the cargo holds, and I would hate for it to go to waste. So obviously nothing interesting happened on the way to Umbra. We got rid of our organics and met another guy at the bar who was willing to buy fuel at a particularly high price. Of course, there's plenty of fuel on the black market here, so I'm perfectly willing to oblige him. Okay, so after picking up some more supplies and fuel, I think we're all done here in Umbra. Let's head out and see if we can find another trade fleet. Oh, well, that didn't take very long. So looking at this fleet composition, nothing strikes me as being particularly dangerous. The Shrike is a bit of a standout, but mostly because its shield could take a little bit of time to work through. Everything else should be fairly trivial here. So once again, I'm going to start by just having the smaller ships follow the mule. I might decide to have the omen follow me if things start to look dire, but that's a bridge we can cross when we get to it. It would appear we're just going to do some light skirmishing with the Shrike for now. I'd love for it to charge us, but it doesn't seem to want to commit for the moment. Trying to bait the charge again, but I don't think it's going to happen. Probably going to have to make the first move here. Well, that seems to have pissed it off. We're getting flanked a bit here, so I think I'm going to use the soon-to-be corpse of this Shrike as cover until we can finish it off. And with that thing out of the way, the rest of this fight should be fairly trivial. We even got a nice double kill. Dear diary, I killed 2 ships at the same time today. And we've arrived just in time to see this wayfarer get a face full of lightning from the omen. Oh, and some lightning up the butt for good measure. So with all the combat ships off the board, it's really just a question of how many of these freighters we can catch up to before they can escape. The only ship I actually really want is the Dram, as we currently don't have a fuel tanker. So I'm just going to deploy a few of our fastest ships here. I don't really need them to eliminate any targets so much as slow them down until I can get to them. And I'm just going to prioritize the Dram and the shuttle, as those are the only ones that really stand much chance of getting away. So after an absolutely riveting chase, we unfortunately did not get the Dram, but I think we will get the Shrike here. And on top of what we already previously picked up, I'd say it's been a pretty good haul. On the logistics side, we got the Buffalo, and on the combat side, we got the Omen, and now the Shrike. And I think next time we'll start off by getting this thing outfitted for combat. So until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you out there in the sector.